On the 17th of May 2008, police in the UK were called to attend an accident that had taken place on a motorway in the county of Staffordshire. Reports indicated that a pedestrian had been hit by a vehicle, already an unusual and extremely serious situation. As motorway police raced to the scene, they were unaware entirely just how much more unusual, even bizarre, their day was about to become. A chain of events had begun that would end with one person dead, 3 seriously injured, and an uncanny mystery the like of which the police had never encountered before. Ursula Eriksson and Sabina Eriksson were born in 1967 in Sweden. The pair were identical twins and remained close as they grew up in the small municipality of Sunne. Eventually, in adulthood, they parted ways to pursue their own lives and relationships. Ursula moved to the United States, while Sabina took up residence in Ireland, where she married and had 2 children. The two lived separate and quite peaceful lives. Though, of course, not everything was perfect, they avoided any particular misfortune. They were never in trouble with the law and never suffered serious ill health, either mental or physical. They had friends, maintained relationships, worked and lived. In May 2008, Ursula flew to Ireland to pay her sister a surprise visit. At some point during this trip, things began to go wrong. The pair may have argued with Sabina's husband, although this is disputed. Whether because of an argument or not, in the very early hours of the 17th of May, they left Sabina's home and travelled to the nearby city of Dublin. There, they boarded a ferry and travelled to Liverpool, in England, arriving just after dawn. From the ferry terminal, they went immediately to a local police station to report that they were worried about the welfare of Sabina's children. A report was taken, communicated to police in Ireland, and followed up on. The Irish police officers who investigated the complaint saw no cause for alarm, and no further action was taken. Ursula and Sabina, meanwhile, had continued their journey. They boarded a National Express coach to London. About an hour into this trip, the coach pulled into Keele service station in the county of Staffordshire to change drivers. At this point, the sisters' behaviour began to cause concern to the drivers and other passengers. The pair refused to place their bags in the luggage hold, and acted very oddly when questioned. Worried that their luggage contained something dangerous, the driver asked to see inside their bags. The sisters refused, and in turn, the driver refused to allow them back onto the coach. It left without them, leaving them stranded at the service station. Here, their odd behaviour continued. A manager at the service station observed them behaving in a way that, again, led him to believe there might be something dangerous in their bags. The police were called, attended, and questioned the sisters. Though Sabina and Ursula appeared a little out of place, they had not committed any crime. The police left without further action. So too did the sisters. Denied coach travel, they set out on foot along the M6. Pedestrians are not permitted on British motorways, which are reserved for high-speed traffic. Their mere presence, thus, was cause for some alarm. All the more so when they crossed to the central reservation, where no pedestrians should ever be. Not far down the road from Keele services, they were seen on camera attempting to cross back to one side of the road. As they did so, Sabina was hit by a car on the southbound carriageway. Police were called, and officers from a department dedicated to policing roads in the area attended. With them were a small camera crew, filming an episode of the television show Motorway Cops, a documentary that explores the work of road traffic police in the UK, and which generally features police dealing with speeding or intoxicated drivers or road traffic collisions. On this day, when confronted by police, the sisters appeared quite normal, and gave the impression that they were merely stranded. As officers were discussing the situation with one another, however, everything changed. Without warning, Ursula dodged past the officer watching her and ran out onto the still active motorway. The officer grabbed her jacket, but she simply shrugged out of it, and threw herself against the side of an articulated lorry, moving at around 80 kilometers per hour or 50 miles per hour. The impact knocked her out of her shoes and threw her to the ground, where her legs came into contact with the wheels of the lorry, resulting in serious injuries. A moment later, unprompted, Sabina also ran out into traffic and was hit by a car, which knocked her briefly unconscious. Police rushed to stop traffic and call for ambulances. They were baffled by this bizarre turn of events, but this was just the beginning. Ursula regained consciousness first, while it took Sabina almost 15 minutes to become responsive again. Both sisters, on waking, immediately began shouting and struggling. Ursula said to officers, "I recognize you. You're not real. And I will haunt you." Sabina, meanwhile, shouted out to her sister, warning her that they're going to steal your organs. Both shouted for help while actively resisting the help they were being given, and both called for the police to be summoned, even though they were surrounded by police officers. Sabina, less seriously injured than her sister, got to her feet, punched a police officer, and then ran onto the other carriageway. Police stopped traffic in this direction too, gave chase, and eventually detained her. At this point in time, Sabina had twice been hit by cars travelling at motorway speeds. But despite this, she fought wildly. It took several police officers and assistance from members of the public to subdue her. She appeared to display unnatural strength as she kicked, spat, and fought against half a dozen people until she was finally handcuffed and confined to a police vehicle. Ursula was sedated, loaded into an air ambulance, and taken to hospital. Sabina was transported in handcuffs by ambulance. She became calm once away from the scene and, miraculously, appeared to have no serious injuries. She spent the night in a police cell in the nearby city of Stoke-on-Trent and attended court there the next morning. She pled guilty to a range of traffic offences and to striking a police officer, and was sentenced to 1 day in custody, which she had already effectively served. She was thus immediately released. Now alone, she wandered the streets of Stoke-on-Trent until 7 p.m, when 2 local men noticed that she appeared to be lost and distressed. They were Glenn Hollinshead and Peter Malloy, both of whom lived nearby. Glenn was an ex-paramedic and may have recognised Sabina's appearance and demeanour as signs that she was in distress. Peter, for his part, believed that she was fleeing an abusive relationship. As Sabina did not have a place to stay, Glenn invited her back to his house. The 3 went there and shared several drinks. Sabina behaved erratically, offering to share a carton of cigarettes and then abruptly changing her mind and snatching the cigarettes out of their mouths, saying that she believed they had been poisoned. Perturbed, Peter left, and Sabina spent the night at Glenn's house. The next day, Glenn called his brother, asking for assistance in calling local hospitals to try and locate Ursula. By the evening, they had not yet found Ursula, and Sabina was still at his house. While preparing an evening meal, Glenn went outside his house to where his next-door neighbour, Frank Booth, was washing his car. Glenn asked if he could borrow some tea bags, and Frank said he would fetch some momentarily once he had finished what he was doing. Glenn went back inside his own house, only to emerge a moment later, hunched over and bleeding profusely. "She's stabbed me," he said, and indeed Sabina had stabbed him repeatedly and without warning with one of his own kitchen knives. She fled the scene. An ambulance was called, but Glenn died before paramedics arrived, living just long enough to ask his neighbour to look after his pet dog. Sabina ran. From Glenn's house, she had also taken a hammer. A passing motorist, Joshua Grattage, stopped and attempted to disarm her. He was successful in wresting the hammer away from her, but Sabina had also concealed a piece of roofing slate in her pocket. She pulled this out and hit him with it, seriously injuring him and forcing him to let her go. Sabina ran once again. As police and paramedics approached, she sprinted out onto a bridge over a dual carriageway and then leapt over the railing, falling 12 metres or 40 feet into high-speed traffic below. With both ankles broken and a serious head injury, she was finally detained, and the bizarre chain of events came to an end. The two sisters had left dozens of people distressed and traumatized. They had killed one person, injured another, injured themselves, and caused countless hours of chaos and confusion. But why? Once recovered, Ursula left the country without being detained. As soon as she had recovered, Sabina was arrested for Glenn's murder. During the trial, her defense argued that she and her twin were suffering from a particular kind of psychosis named folie à deux, French for madness of two. This is a phenomenon where one person experiencing delusional beliefs, hallucinations, or a manic state can, by close contact, effectively transfer this madness to another. The sisters being twins, it was argued, made them particularly susceptible. The idea that their actions had been caused by a transient state of psychosis certainly seemed probable, as Sabina was quite sane and lucid throughout her trial. She pled guilty to manslaughter with diminished responsibility due to her mental ill health at the time of her crimes. The prosecution accepted this, and she was ultimately sentenced to 5 years in prison for the killing of Glenn Hollinshead. Glenn's family stated that they did not particularly blame her for what had happened. Glenn's brother said in an interview, "We don't hold her responsible, the same as we wouldn't blame a rabid dog for biting someone. She is ill, and to a large degree, not responsible for her actions." However, it was widely noted by Glenn's family and by commentators that Sabina should not have been released from custody without psychiatric evaluation. It appeared that police had discussed the need for this when detaining her, and it had been clear to those who saw her behaviour on the motorway that it would be necessary. But due to limited resources and her apparently normal behaviour later on, she was released without further investigation. Had she been investigated, evaluated, and given medical help during her episode of mental ill health, it was widely accepted that Glenn Hollinshead need not have died. After serving her prison sentence, Sabina returned to Ireland. She and her sister have, it appears, lived normal lives ever since the bizarre incident that left both injured and made one of them a murderer.